The Manhattan Project was the code name for a project conducted during World War II to develop the first atomic bomb. The project was led by the United States and included scientists from the United Kingdom and Canada. Formally designated as the Manhattan Engineer District, MED, it refers specifically to the period of the project from 1940 to 1946 under the control of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, under the administration of General Leslie R. Groves. The scientific research was directed by American physicist J. Robert Oppenheimer. The project's roots lay in fears that since the 1930s, Nazi Germany was also investigating nuclear weapons of its own. Born out of a small research program in 1939, the Manhattan Project eventually employed more than 130,000 people and cost nearly $24 billion. It resulted in the creation of multiple production and research sites that operated in secret. The three primary research and production sites of the project were the plutonium production facility at what is now the Hanford site, the uranium enrichment facilities at Oak Ridge, Tennessee, led by MIT professor Manson Benedict, and the Weapons Research and Design Laboratory now known as Los Alamos National Laboratory. Project research took place at over 30 sites across the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom. The MED maintained control over U.S. weapons production until the formation of the Atomic Energy Commission in January 1947. Because code names were meant to conceal the exact purpose of and details behind the project, it is widely believed that this is true of the Manhattan Project's name. However, the project was in fact named for where many of its early operations were conducted. According to historian Robert Norris, Manhattan contained at least 10 sites where the project's work was being conducted. The island was ideal because of its port facilities, the military presence, a large available workforce, a population of European physicists, and Columbia University, a center of early nuclear research. Though it involved over 30 different research and production sites, the Manhattan Project was largely carried out at 4 secret laboratories that were established by power of eminent domain in 4 cities: Los Alamos, New Mexico; Oak Ridge, Tennessee; Richland, Washington; Chalk River, Ontario, Canada. The Tennessee site was chosen because of the vast quantities of cheap hydroelectric power already available there, due to the Tennessee Valley Authority necessary to produce uranium-235 in giant ion separation magnets. The Hanford site near Richland, Washington, was chosen for its location near the Columbia River, a river that could supply water to cool the reactors, which would produce the plutonium. The Canadian site, Chalk River, Ontario, was chosen for its proximity to the industrial manufacturing of Ontario and Quebec, located on a railhead adjacent to a large military base, Camp Petawawa, located on the Ottawa River. It had access to abundant water. All the sites were suitably far from coastlines and therefore less vulnerable to possible enemy attack from Germany or Japan. The Los Alamos National Laboratory was built on a mesa that previously hosted the Los Alamos Ranch Private School. The site was chosen primarily for its remoteness. Oppenheimer had known of it from his horse riding near his ranch in New Mexico, and he showed it as a possible site to the government representatives, who promptly bought it for $440,000. In addition to being the main think tank, Los Alamos was responsible for final assembly of the bombs, mainly from materials and components produced by other sites. Manufacturing at Los Alamos included casings, explosive lenses, and fabrication of fissile materials into bomb cores. Oak Ridge facilities covered more than 60,000 acres, 243 kilometers, of several former farm communities in the Tennessee Valley area. Some Tennessee families were given 2 weeks' notice to vacate family farms that had been their homes for generations. So secret was the site during World War II that the state governor was unaware that Oak Ridge, which was to become the 5th largest city in the state, was being built. At one point, Oak Ridge plants were consuming 1/6 of the electrical power produced in the U.S., more than New York City. Oak Ridge mainly produced uranium-235. Chalk River was established to house the Allied effort that was going on at McGill University in Montreal. Since the site was 120 miles west of Ottawa, a new community was also built at Deep River, Ontario, to be the home of the project team members. Both were established in 1944 with scientists, engineers, trades from Canada, the United Kingdom, New Zealand, Australia, France, Norway, etc. providing their contribution to the war effort. The Hanford site, which grew to almost 1,000 square miles, 2,600 kilometers, took over irrigated farmland, fruit orchards, a railroad, and two farming communities, Hanford and White Bluffs, in a highly populated area where three cities converge, called the Tri-Cities, Kennewick, Pasco, and Richland. Adjacent to the Columbia River, Hanford hosted nuclear reactors, cooled by the river, and was the plutonium production center. The existence of these sites and the secret cities of Los Alamos, Oak Ridge, Richland, and Chalk River were not made public until the announcement of the Hiroshima explosion, and the sites remained secret until after the end of World War II. The project originally was headquartered at 270 Broadway in Manhattan. Other offices were scattered throughout the city, including the New York Friars Club building. The Broadway headquarters lasted little more than a year before it was moved in 1943, although many of the other offices in Manhattan remained. Vannevar Bush became dissatisfied with Colonel James Marshall's failure to get the project moving forward expeditiously and made this known to Secretary of War Stimson and Army Chief of Staff George Marshall. Marshall then directed General Somervell to replace Colonel Marshall with a more energetic officer as director. In the summer of 1942, Colonel Leslie Groves was deputy to the Chief of Construction for the Army Corps of Engineers and had overseen the very rapid construction of the Pentagon, the world's largest office building. He was widely respected as an intelligent, hard-driving, though brusque officer who got things done in a hurry. Hoping for an overseas command, Groves vigorously objected when Somervell appointed him to the weapons project. His objections were overruled, and Groves resigned himself to leading a project he thought had little chance of success. Groves appointed Oppenheimer as the project's scientific director, to the surprise of many. Oppenheimer's radical political views were thought to pose security problems. However, Groves was convinced Oppenheimer was a genius who could talk about and understand nearly anything, and he was convinced such a man was needed for a project such as the one being proposed. Groves renamed the project the Manhattan Engineer District. The name evolved from the Corps of Engineers' practice of naming districts after its headquarters city. Marshall's headquarters were in New York City. At that time, Groves was promoted to Brigadier General, giving him the rank necessary to deal with senior people whose cooperation was required, or whose own projects were hampered by Groves' top priority project. Within a week of his appointment, Groves had solved the Manhattan Project's most urgent problems. His forceful and effective manner was soon to become all too familiar to the atomic scientists. The first major scientific hurdle of the project was solved on December 2, 1942, beneath the bleachers of Stagg Field at the University of Chicago, where a team led by Enrico Fermi, for whom Fermi is named, initiated the first artificial self-sustaining nuclear chain reaction in an experimental nuclear reactor named Chicago Pile 1. A coded phone call from Compton saying, "The Italian navigator," referring to Fermi, "has landed in the New World. The natives are friendly," to Conant in Washington, D.C., brought news of the experiment's success.